Okay, let's make a start by looking at some of the problems you're probably facing in the classroom on a daily basis. Things like constant talking, students who are talking over you. There's that constant chatter going on when you're trying to run the lesson. Not to say that noise sometimes isn't a good thing. In a lesson where students are actively involved, there may be a fair amount of noise. But when you're trying to explain something and students are talking over you, then that's clearly not acceptable. Students who aren't working, no matter what you say to them, no matter what you do, no matter how long you stay up at night planning really interesting lessons, they're just not getting involved, they're not working. Students who get up and wander around, just get out of the seats, wander around without permission to do so. Lazy students, back to not working, students who put their heads on the desk, who just can't be bothered, who turn up late, sometimes don't even turn up at all, they're just dragging their heels, they really look as if they just can't be bothered to do anything at all. Students who answer back, so you give them an instruction or you tell them to do something and they answer back. Students who ignore you completely, they ignore your instructions and just turn their back on you, or just ignore what you say. Students who are shouting across the room, or worse, shouting at you. Students who are abusive to each other and you. Students who are threatening to each other and possibly even you. And students who just laugh at you. You give them an instruction, you're supposed to be in charge in the classroom, and they're just laughing at you. Now clearly, if you're seeing problems like that in your classroom, the classroom is out of control. But don't worry, because you're not in the minority with that. We've asked this question time and time again in seminars all over the world, and it's the same sort of response every time. These are the sorts of problems that teachers say they are facing in the classroom on a daily, even lesson by lesson basis. Now what I'd like to ask now is how much time you spend dealing with those problems. Now by dealing, I mean preparing. So preparing for students not sitting together. Certain students you know are going to be a nightmare if they're sat next to each other, so you prepare to prevent a problem with them by sitting them apart. You prepare certain activities for certain students because you know they're not going to buy into the main lesson activity. So preparing for problems, managing problems in the moment. So when it goes wrong, how long are you spending actually dealing with it in the moment and trying to put the situation right? And then finally, how long do you spend mopping up? So getting students settled after an incident, or dealing with their problems after the lesson, after the event's taken place. All those three things constitute managing behaviour. And what I'd like to know is, roughly, how long do you think you spend on a lesson by lesson basis managing behaviour, dealing with behaviour problems in the classroom? Now let's take an average lesson as being an hour, and I'm going to give you the figures that I normally get when I do this in a live basis. Normally people will say, on average, around 15 to 20 minutes spent per lesson dealing with behaviour. So that's preparing, managing and mopping up. Now in some lessons that can be as high as an hour out of an hour. In some lessons it might only be 5 minutes. We've got different groups, we've got different types of students, but on average, usually people are spending about 15 to 20 minutes per hour's lesson dealing with behaviour problems. Now I'll put my hand on heart and say that when I started teaching in some of the schools I was working in, particularly some of the behaviour centres I was working in, pretty much 1 hour of every hour was spent dealing with behaviour. That was preparing, mainly managing with it in the moment and mopping up afterwards. 1 hour of every hour. Clearly, if you're spending about 15 to 20 minutes per lesson looking after behaviour problems, that's going to equate to about 2 hours plus per day, up to 10 hours plus per week. And that is gradually going to grind you down. That's a tremendous waste of time on a collective basis. Lesson after lesson, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, career after career. We could go on. What I'd like to know now is how it makes you feel. Think about that. You're dealing with this behaviour on a daily basis. If you're not, you wouldn't be watching this video now. So you're spending a lot of time currently stressing out dealing with behaviour problems. So how does that make you feel? Not just in the moment when you're really pushed to the limit, when your buttons are being pressed by challenging students, but how does it make you feel when you see that time being spent or wasted dealing with behaviour? The usual answers we get are very stressed out. You get to a Friday afternoon and you're really at your limits. You're stressed out, exhausted, worn out, frustrated by the fact that you're not able to do what you consider to be the best for these students. They just won't accept your help. Frustrated that you're not able to succeed, you're not able to do your job, you're not able to teach because these problems are getting in the way. Angry, it makes you so frustrated that you're actually angry and tense inside, and you can feel yourself tensing up when you're dealing with these problems on a daily basis. Some people say it makes them feel like a total failure, and it actually makes them feel like giving up. Indeed, one of the biggest reasons cited for teachers leaving the profession is an inability to deal with the behaviour problems that they're facing week after week, month after month, year after year. And teachers just see it not getting any better, so they just feel like giving up. What's the point in going on when these problems just aren't going to get sorted out? Drained and weary. Obviously, when all your resources are going into trying to solve these problems, you are completely spent. It's going to make you feel drained. You've got nothing left in the tank. And a lot of people end up feeling very bitter. Now, these are what people tell us in live workshops. This is how people say they feel when they're confronted by behaviour problems day after day, week after week, month after month. And there's a reason why we've done this, because it's very important to realise just how drained, bitter, angry, frustrated, stressed and exhausted we feel, and how that impacts on how we behave. Because our behaviour, our actions are driven by our emotions and by our feelings. And all this stuff here has a tremendous impact and a tremendous effect on how we respond to and interact with the students that we're teaching. And as we go on, we'll see just how important that is, how crucial it is. So the aim of this is to reduce the amount of time that we're spending having to deal with behaviour and to change some of these feelings so that we can change them from very negative to very positive and get back the joy of teaching. Get back to going into lessons and feeling fantastic about the students that you're going to be working with. Even the challenging ones, even the ones that really, really have pushed your buttons in the past. It's possible to start going into the classroom looking forward to teaching those students. And for them to start coming into the classroom with smiles on their faces. Because the whole situation is going to change, and it's going to change radically.